All right, go.
We'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Bigger, roll call, please.
Harrington.
Here.
Perkins.
Here.
Musgrave. Here. Brandon. Here. Kinnaman.
Here.
Heyer. Here. Delaney.
Here. We have a quorum. Consent agenda. All items listed under consent agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the Village Council and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and discussed separately immediately after consent agenda approval in its normal sequence on the regular agenda. What is the pleasure of council?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Right, motion by Musgrave, support by Perkins to approve the consent agenda as presented. Ms. Bigger, roll call vote, please.
Musgrave.
Yes.
Brandon.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
Heyer.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes. Motion carries. Public comment. Members of the public may address council once recognized by the chairperson. Comments are limited to a maximum of 4 minutes for items not on the agenda. Council may extend this time by up to an additional 4 minutes by a majority vote. For items on the agenda, comments may be made after council discussion prior to council vote. Prior to addressing council, members of the public will please state their name and address for the record. And for the sake of anyone in the audience this evening who may not have the agenda in front of them, items under new business include consideration of the approval of resolution, old business, the village office's site selection, consideration of the approval of resolution 2023-036, encouraging support for small businesses, consideration of the approval of council action request to accept the recommendation of the Ethics Committee to take no action, and number 3, a special event, Halloween. So this first public comment section is for any issues that are not any one of those 4 things. Is there anyone for public comment? Mr. Love.
Man, just in time. I'm talking about something that is doing great harm to the
Could you say your name and address, please?
John Love, 200 North Saginaw, Holly, Michigan. I want to talk about something that's doing great harm to the village and a loss of business and traffic. The Holly Hotel. Wow. What's happened here? We had a big fire. And the repairs are being halted, not delayed, halted, by Jay Walker's son. This is unacceptable. And I've had a few experiences repairing buildings in the village and what you have to go through and what I've had to go through with the village. And a couple of elements are very basic. First of all, Jay Walker cannot be involved because of conflict of interest. Okay, he's off the table. So somebody has to manage this thing. You need to have the village attorney involved. You need to have an engineering company come in and outline what needs to be done to immediately repair the situation. Not, well, I'm working on it, I'm going to build a building someday. No, it has to be done now, and it has to be resolved now. And there's only one group that can do this, and you're looking at them. So you need to step up and play the game and get it fixed. The required repairs, time limits, and I went through it with the mayor and House and Sherman. with a report schedule, and to get to some third party to do this engineering evaluation and present it immediately. Not, well, we're going to think about it, we got to work on it, we're going to wait until the moon comes up. You need to do something now. It's too late. It's all gone on for too long. So it's your responsibility to do something, not Jerry Walker's son, Jerry Walker. It's you. So please do it now, not next week. It's damaging the business, it's damaging the hotel, it's damaging the community. And then, well, I can talk about a few other things too. The banners are here, let's put them up. These banners have been here too long, the Broncos are faded, it looks tacky. So let's move Holly up a notch with a few simple things, like get the hotel fixed now, urgent, not, well, we're working on it and we don't know what to do. You can do this. I've been involved in this. If you want, I could put me on the committee. And I'll fix it and make sure it's done fast. If you want to drag it out, okay, but don't drag it beyond doing something today. Not next week. Not, well, we'll figure it out. Do something today. You got a couple of players here. This is the town. You can't just let this go. Also, you cut down their trees in front of their house, and it was their hotel, and were theirs. And then you left two standing in front of the clubhouse for the trains that were marked to be torn down. So, you gotta move it up a notch. And that's the way to do it. And I'd volunteer to be helpful and to do it, but, you know who I am. Too knowledgeable. So let's see what you can come up with here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Love. Is there anyone else for public comment? Yes.
Do I have to stand?
Yes, please.
You might as well hold this too.
Okay.
No, they don't hear what you say.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. I'm Andrea Chapin. I'm from 208 South Broad Street, better known as Andy's Place. I'm Andy, for those who haven't seen me in a while. It's been over a year. In any case, I'm here today because I wanted to, get consensus agreement that it's okay for me to park my food truck, which is Andy's Place Gone Mobile, over on the old arcade area. Jeremiah Roberts has given me permission to park there, which that way I'll be able to serve the community from the Battle Alley area. So I'm here to present that request.
Do we need a motion for that? Or can we now?
So my understanding is that, and anyone can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my understanding was that there isn't council action necessary on that per se. We just need to give the go-ahead, if that's what we want to do, and
I
then
just wanted to notify
administration would be able
everybody and
to,
make sure that if
yeah.
anybody had any
I think that microphone's going out.
resistance to that.
yeah. I certainly would not have any opposition to that.
No, go for it.
Okay,
Right.
that's all I needed.
I believe because it's on private property,
I don't think we get a say
have
in
not
it.
required any permitting or anything from anyone else who is parked on private property. When they park or do something on village property or public streets, then we have required something. So I would say consensus.
Is it consensus? Do we actually have any say in this at all? It's private property.
It might not be.
I think
No.
if
You don't need
anything, this is an unnecessary step and it's outside of our purview.
Yeah, and that might,
I believe, my understanding is it's up to Jeremiah and you.
yeah.
I think we're
Okay,
redundant.
Well, I think it was just
Courtesy.
Courtesy. Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Bigger, did you have a thought on that?
Well, we actually have a permit on food trucks normally anywhere in the village, even on private property. But since she is a brick and mortar business, administration doesn't have any problem with it and does not require a permit because she has a brick and mortar business.
Okay.
So it looks like all ordinances and everything are attended to?
Yep, good.
Awesome.
Sweet, thank you.
Beautiful.
Fry on.
Yeah.
Well, we will be out there in the evenings between 5 and 8. That's our plan. And during lunch and regular meal. And on the weekends, in case anybody's out there. But as far as my building, we're still working on it. Still looking for funding through different grant organizations and things like that. But it's that's still the plan. We're still planning on rebuilding.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
Yep. Anyone else for public comment? Yep. Ms. Wallace.
Thanks,
Thank
Andy.
you.
Thanks, Andy.
Angela, is
Angela.
that working? No.
Seems
We
like
need
not.
to-
Josh just turned it down.
Can we swap it out for one of you? It wasn't working before he turned it down.
There was reverb happening over here.
Right.
Big time.
Okay, I've hit every button on here, and we'll try to get.
Hello?
He's,
John,
Here
you
comes
broke
Josh.
it.
What's not working?
is that microphone? Okay, but it's
Oh.
not in here.
Too loud.
Oh,
Okay.
all right. Very good.
Okay.
If we can hear it on
Okay,
the stream, that's good.
that's good.
I know, but he's pushing buttons over here.
Oh, don't push buttons on that, you'll change the channel.
John.
Please stop.
There is no volume on that.
All right, Ms. Wallace.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
No,
It's
Sorry.
been
it
like
wasn't.
that.
It's been that way, Josh.
I could hear her yelling.
You may hear it there, but it's not in the room.
Not that I can. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I just, Angela Wallace, 709 Bear Street, sorry. I wasn't planning on speaking, but dealing with what Mr. Love just said, and I pulled up the court case online, and it is literally, and I don't know how to pronounce it, the MEGISTE Company, an LLC company, a Michigan Limited Liability Company, and Holly Management Incorporated, Michigan Corporation doing business as the Historic Holly Hotel, which is the plaintiff, versus Jeremiah Roberts, an individual, which is the defendant. Has nothing to do with y'all. It's two property owners that are disputing. So the fact that it was said that you guys have this in your control, this is in the courts. This has nothing to do with you. So if you need to know, I have the number of the case docket, so it has nothing to do with that, Mr. Love. Thank you.
Thank you. Order. Anyone else for public comment? Hearing none, seeing none. We'll move on to old business. The village office's site selection. Ms. Bigger, would you like to introduce this?
Sure.
Okay.
I can't type and hold it. I'm not that talented, just so you know.
You are Superwoman.
Council has been reviewing this for more than 10 months. The Community Development Committee studied the issue after months of research and 5 meetings with the Community Development meetings. They chose Cyclone Park. The village hired a professional firm, H2A Architects, to do a needs study. She could not be here tonight. She has attended 3 other meetings. They did research. They also recommended Cyclone Park. The Finance Committee has met twice on the issue. President Delaney is the chair of the Finance Committee. Maybe he can address their findings. They were not submitted.
Yeah, certainly. So as Ms. Bigger mentioned, the Finance Committee did meet with representatives from the township, namely Supervisor Cullis and Clerk Winchester on 2 occasions to hash out a sample contract or agreement, what that would look like if council were to choose to go in with the township at the Grange Hall location. And after a fair bit of very productive discussion, we did produce, I should say the township produced a sample contract that is very much based on the contract that we, the village, currently have with Holly Area Schools for our offices here at the Carl Richter Center. Ms. Brandon or Ms. Kyer, did you have anything to add to that as far as highlights from those meetings?
Sure, we've got some highlights, and we reviewed the motion from the previous meeting. We did not find it to be our body's position to make a recommendation, but just to garner the best contract possible. Just make that clear. So as of when we spoke at the last meeting, the contract sample presented to us by the township supervisor was not approved by the township board. But we discussed the difference between condoing or leasing. Condoing was our original thought, as everyone seemed to typically agree that owning is better than renting. But given the circumstances, I'm not certain if condoing or leasing would be more appropriate. We'd be looking at a 25-year payback loan based on the finance amount or lease. We talked about responsibility of grounds and building maintenance during the loan repayment. So the village would be responsible for its own building, which I thought made a lot of sense for the interior space, the remodeling, the ceiling, walls, and et cetera. But when it came to the foundation, roof, or exterior, I didn't completely agree with that being the village's responsibility, but it wouldn't be until 20 years down the road. So we talked about who else might share acreage with us and how close our neighbors would be. And it would be village and township offices only. And the township supervisor said he would not enter fair say conditions into the contract, but then he did. So there would be fair say conditions where the village would have as much say as the township did on any important decisions. Some of the pros were that the space that we would have would be bigger. We'd have more rooms. There'd be separate meeting rooms. The township could loan us money or lease to us. Parking is guaranteed, and the village gets to designate its own spaces. Our physical space is guaranteed for village use only. Some of the cons, the township attorney was unable to create a contract in time. I was a little unclear as to the reason why the rest of the attorney's firm wasn't utilized, but to be fair, maybe that's just because that specific attorney had the most knowledge of this situation. The biggest con, I thought, was that the contract sample the township supervisor presented us with was not approved by the township board. There's been a lot of debate on whether or not contracts can be broken. I'm unclear on this myself. If the township failed to maintain their agreement, the village would have an option to move out, but the village would still be responsible for paying the building's renovation and would have to surrender all ownership. So we're not going to walk away owning anything, even though condoing kind of means owning. I'm kind of wondering what the meetings would look like with all of the different things that would have to be agreed on. I'd imagine that the council would have extra meetings, the township would have extra meetings, we'd have to have meetings together. I have a personal concern regarding being able to keep interested people in office who are qualified and feel that they're being paid enough. So I'm worried that this would reflect on the taxpayer later if we're looking at weekly meetings instead of monthly meetings. I don't think that we can generate an income on township property for the village through community center dues or et cetera. So I thought that the contract, that the sample, the idea that was being offered, was fair on some parts and not so much on others. Especially considering the surrender clause. And that's it for my highlights.
Ms. Skyer, anything to add?
Nothing to add.
Okay. In that case,
But to be fair,
Yeah.
did either of you feel that I misrepresented or said anything
Oh, no.
incorrectly?
not at all.
Okay.
No, not for me. In that case, a motion and support would be in order, and that would then be followed by further council discussion if desired, and further public comment if desired.
Could I ask a question maybe first?
Certainly.
So one of the comments was about the condo option, and that was not in this. Do we know if that's available to us?
A lot of this is on the basis that we're going to be brought to the table and able to still come up with a more specific contract that would suit all of our needs.
So yet to be determined.
But I do believe Supervisor Cullis did say in our finance meeting that your attorney approved that we could do the condoing.
Either or.
Yes,
It's just they didn't have enough time to draw.
yes.
Do you have you gotten anything at this point?
You mind, I think it's a natural point to take questions from Supervisor Cullis. Thank you.
So, just to clarify what Lyman said, you have a sample copy of it. I made the statement when I came to those meetings that we have the cart in front of the horse when you ask for an actual leasing agreement or contract, because a lot of the issues as to how the building will be used, dollars. Is that better?
A little bit.
Okay. So, some of those issues weren't able to be finalized. That's why the attorneys couldn't put together a final contract, because there's numbers, there's percentages that have to go in there. Now, the attorneys, at the time of the Finance Committee meeting, weren't able to produce this, but this is pretty much, just go ahead and pass that down. And that condoing was an option. The difference that Ms. Brandon was talking about was if you're going to take financing from the township, then obviously it's like a home mortgage. The building isn't totally condoed until you pay off the mortgage. It's a lien against it. The revert option that you were talking about was once the building's condoed over to you, that part of the complex belongs to you. If for whatever reason you decide to get up and move, rather than having that building something you can sell to somebody else, it comes back to the township as part of the complex.
You still can't hear what you're saying.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm doing the best, I'm almost eating it. Okay. So apparently it's coming over his mic, just not in here. And the questions that were answered in this lease, we started with the school lease because that's obviously been approved by your attorneys. This one doesn't have any clause for early, we can tell you to move, or that we have to have you out of the building. Those aren't in there. It's all based on either the 13 questions that the village gave us, or then they gave us 21 questions. And it answers all of those questions that we were supplied, which you've had copies of both of those responses, plus the lease that's here.
Any other questions for Mr. Cullis before we proceed? Thank you very much, Mr. Cullis. What is the pleasure of council? Before we proceed to further discussion, if that is what is desired.
I'm trying to figure out how to word things. how it gets worded, that
Mm.
says that, that we approve, or that, well, how do you make this? That's the struggle. I make a motion for,
I would say that last
yeah,
line.
I'm not saying that one.
But you can, but you can plug and play with, yeah.
That's why the wording needs to be figured out as to how, I would like to see this move forward without wording it that we completely approve this document, but we approve the steps made and agree that this would be the right route to take.
That could be a conditional motion, so a motion to select the Grange Hall location as the site for village offices, conditioned on an agreement being reached between the village and the township, acceptable to the village attorney, something along those lines. That way, there's an out. If that contract doesn't come forth or
Right.
isn't to your liking, then you're out.
What he said.
Well, we have some sort of motion on the table. Is there any support for that motion?
I'll support that motion.
Right, motion by Kinnaman, support by Harrington to, what was that again, Mr. Gilmer?
Select the Grange Hall location as the site for village offices, subject to a village township contract on terms acceptable to the village attorney.
Thank you. Right, council discussion.
Over the course of the last month, I've surveyed approximately 200 residents, and by a 7 out of 10 margin, Cyclone was the choice.
Oh, really?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said that over the course of the last month, since our last meeting, I've interviewed approximately 200 residents. I went door to door and I spoke to different people. And by a 7 out of 10 margin, they wanted it to stay in the village and be at Cyclone Park. That's just what the residents said.
Ms. Musgrave?
I have concern, especially in light of what has happened now with the leasing. It goes back to, we own Cyclone.
Hmm.
We have to do something with the building anyways. Roofing was budgeted in. There's plenty of space there to be upgraded. We have a meeting room at the police department where we have always had our meetings at previously. And it just makes sense that we go with something that we own, that we can invest in. It's our property. Why not?
And when you say, what's happening now, I assume you're referring to Holly area schools, how do I word this? Yeah, moving up the, changing the timeline by an entire year. We, the village, have to be out of our current offices an entire year ahead of schedule. And that is something that Holly area schools, that is 100% their prerogative to do.
Something else that concerns me too is originally it was stated that there were going to be other non-governmental businesses allowed to move into the property. And if there's a community center built, that we would pay half of that. We don't have money for that. The village doesn't have money for that. So, again, going back to the fact that we own the property, we're investing in our own business, so, that's just my thoughts on the matter.
Thank
I mean,
you.
it makes better sense.
A couple of things I have done in research on location, on things that have been brought up. One of the things I've done is asked a couple of builders and people who have worked with construction on what is an actual cost per square foot to do a renovation. The nature of Cyclone Park. $300 a square foot is what was the range that was quoted to me. And, sorry, I'm having to get back to something here. Based on 3,500 square feet of space over at Cyclone, that's actually over $1 million. It's not 500,000 like, is being suggested. The estimate from the consultants was 770 was their estimate, and when you look at the market that we are in, we're talking closer to $1 million. We don't have $1 million. No matter what options we choose with that location, actually with either location, we're borrowing money from somebody. I took time to call and talk to the USDA offices about the grant that's been listed. We don't qualify for that grant. The income level cutoff for that grant is $46,800 and some change as a median income. Holly has a $54,200 median income by the census.
The village or the township?
The village,
Really?
yes. That's what the 2020 census came out with.
That's surprising.
Mhm. There are neighborhoods that are below that. There are apparently neighborhoods that are above that. But that is considered the median income that has come out by the government. Actually, I have a copy of it in here. 'Cause I printed it out from the U.S. Census. And if we would have qualified for that grant, the maximum they give out in that grant is around $50,000 with around a 55% match. And it's not used for construction, but rather for equipment, like maybe a fire engine or, towards something like that, or park equipment, or those types of things. That's what that grant would be for. They did say that we could qualify for a loan, which is much more flexible in projects, with a 30-year typically bond that is issued, which means that we seek approval from our constituents to take out a bond to be paid back, which also needs to go and be approved through the bond council, which would tell us what our limits are on doing that kind of thing. If that bond is through the USDA program, they are currently working with the government's Build American, Buy American, whatever they call it, which requires that all of the materials be made in America. which does add some cost to it. They also require environmental testing. There's bonding fees, legal fees to prep all of that kind of stuff as well. So if we've got $1 million sitting around that we can do that with, the money that was suggested to us is our $600,000 that is our general fund, plus projected monies. That is what that said, general fund money.
Correct. You asked me to provide you what monies we have, not what monies we're gonna use. Those are the monies we have, yeah.
Right, okay, so they are, that's all the money we've got, we'll put it that way. So if we spend that $600,000, then we don't even have emergency monies, we don't have flex monies for budget changes that we are looking at. We don't have any of those kinds of things available to us if we spend that. So if we don't spend that, then we have to have funds from another source, which is seeking a bond or going with a loan. Now, I don't think the township has offered to loan us money for Cyclone Park. They've offered to loan us money for the other spot. Another thing they suggested too was MEDC offers things, but they offer those to development-ready communities, and we are not there yet, though we have been working on it for about 4 years. We still are not a development-ready community. So I'm looking at the fiscal responsibility of our community that we are entrusted with. And we start to look at this time frame that has now been shortened considerably, that creates another scenario for us. Now, I've heard that the possibility is to move the village offices to DPW for a time. Okay, so if we're looking at relocating to a less than ideal scenario, why are we not looking at an ideal scenario that is currently sitting vacant on Grange Hall Road, that has both the financial opportunity and a short-term entry opportunity and long-term benefit for the community as a whole, both the village and those who use village services that are outside of us. There are significant things that are there that I just, as I look at this, I think there's logic in making this kind of choice. Are there tweaks that need to be made yet in a contract? That's why it's an initial negotiation that has come before us that looks pretty decent, looks doable, with some more discussion to get some things worked out. It's not like we have to spend 1.5 years building out a building that's already there. We can spend some time and build some more offices and figure out cubicles and some desks and put a phone system and internet in. If we really wanted to make that work, we could be there by Christmas. And 100 years from now, people could still show up there at Christmas to pay their bills. That's the possibility that I see that can work. I'm trying to look at logic, and like I said, fiscal responsibility. And there are points where it's good to completely own, and sometimes there are wise times when not. I've had days where I've owned homes, I've had days where I've not, because the finances weren't there to make that happen. And have taken and said, the best option at this time is to not own. But we are looking at, if we have this opportunity for the condo option that's in it, we have that ability to own as well. It's a dual thing. You know, I'm currently living in a condo. It's not that, you know, it's not that hard. When you work the agreement correctly, who does what and who owns what and who pays for what is very well spelled out. And it doesn't matter if it's today or 10 years or 50 years from now. That still works. I know we talk about, you know, well, we can put some things over at the police station. I know that they're needing to do some expansion of their own and figuring out how to utilize what we would like in that scenario to use for you know, a conference room, a meeting room. They have needs for that space too. That it now places our police department on a much longer time frame to be able to accomplish some of the things that they are needing to do. To make our departments, the things that make up what functions in our village government, you know, able to do that in the best way possible.
I would also like to bring up the fact that it's a conditional motion. It's not a yes. We're going to be looking into it.
That is true. However,
I know time is of the essence.
Right, based upon the information that we have received from our needs assessment firm, H2A Architects, a vote to proceed further with, you know, to further explore the Grange Hall option would effectively practically rule out Cyclone, right?
Well, at this point, it really doesn't, because we can't meet the time frame anyhow that's now before us.
Well, because then, you know, if we were to consider it in the future, that delay would, you know, only just rack up costs, and then of course the argument would be it's, you know, just so prohibitively expensive, even more so than it already was. I did have a question for you, Mr. Kinnaman.
Sure.
So you stated, pardon me if I missed something, but you stated that your research suggested that the cost of rehabbing the Cyclone Park location would be $1 million. That's significantly over the $700,000 that our professional needs assessment firm had estimated. I'm just wondering what your source was there.
I've talked to a couple of builders, and just said, what is the cost to do that type of work? That's where it comes from.
I think, to be fair, in H2A's summary, they did say, when they priced things out, there could be a 30% sway either above, below.
Sure.
So
yeah,
that would make sense if they came in at 7, that it could be $1 million, or
right.
it could be 3, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Couldn't
The-
that go either way? With
exactly,
Either place?
with either place, you're right, because the costs were quite comparable with both, I mean, with both the Cyclone location and the Grange Hall location.
I would actually question some of that, because if you look at what's at the Grange Hall location, it's like, okay, what are we saying we want to do there instead of what is needed to be able to locate there? There are huge differences. I know one of the comments that I have heard is that they're talking that it needs to have suspended ceiling put into an entire space that's over 3,000 square feet that has already been designed with an insulated open ceiling. Okay, that's an expense that is thousands, tens of thousands, or 100,000 even, of expense that is not required to open an office in that building. If you look at, we haven't done environmental work, I don't know if we've even tested to see if the water and sewer lines are not crushed at Cyclone Park, and, there are, and we've had people suggest that the building could be rehabbed, but as many years as that has not been, and it's not been maintained, we're looking at the car dealership that is a similar building that once they got in it, they said it needs to be demolished and completely replaced. So then you go completely starting from scratch. And now that $1 million goes up by another at least $50 a square foot when you start doing new construction.
So what would you say, Mr. Kinnaman, to the ease of access argument? The argument to the effect that the Cyclone Park location would simply be accessed much more easily by many more residents than the Grange Hall location.
Being located in this building, I see very few people who walk to this building. I would say that 90% or more actually drive their vehicle here. Even if they live 2 blocks down, they drive here. Most people do not walk to come to the building. They come by vehicle. I know there was comment about traffic at the other location out on Grange Hall. I found it rather interesting the day that the township did their open house. I was in and out of there about 4 times. One time was during rush hour, and there weren't a bunch of cars there. I didn't wait more than 30 seconds to get out into traffic, to pull out onto the road. I know the township's talking about, I think their board's already approved a speed lane for coming in even, that, for when you're coming from the west, that you're not in the middle of traffic making a turn. The turn lane is being created. Whether we go there or not, they're putting in a turn lane.
I have a quick question. I've heard this multiple times that no matter what, we would have to upgrade Cyclone or make, refurb it. Is there a reason why? As far as I know right now, it's just being held as storage for Dickens. What other purpose would we use it for?
As you're saying, it could just be removed, period.
Right. I'm saying, yeah, if there's a reason that we need to keep it, can somebody tell me? Because I don't know that there's a reason to keep the building if we don't use it. Is it for storage? Is that?
I mean, I don't think there would be a strict need
Okay.
to keep the building. Now, there might be a need
Holly
to,
Volunteer Ambulance Building.
Right.
An asset that we own.
So I'd like to talk about some of the pros that I found of Cyclone. It's ours. That's a, Debbie pointed that out. I kind of looked at it like, why would I want to move in as your roommate when I own my own house? But it is different because it's not that simple and it's not that black and white. There is an equity issue though. And the Cyclone building does need to be addressed anyways. If we're going to be working in there, we can focus on the park's upkeep and family amenities. Now, I had written that grants were possible, and Mr. Kinnaman may have debunked that. I also looked up the village and the township's income levels, and I had thought they were 54 and 49 as of 2020. 54 for township and 49 for village.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I didn't print it out.
Right.
So I'm going to have to default to
And
what.
I did that as I was talking with the person on the phone from the USDA. And she said, my documents that I go by are based on this. And she brought up and this was the newest document that they had just loaded in the last month or so for them to get their numbers from. And so I brought up U.S. Census for Holly, Michigan.
I just did it while you were talking. Holly is at a 14% poverty level. Our median income level is $51,985.
Okay, that's an old number.
I just did it from the U.S. Census while you were
Okay.
talking.
Well, moving back, I've got the floor. Either way, grants are not guaranteed, so I'm just going to kind of scratch that little pro off of there and move forward. So I feel that there is, we'd have the capability of generating funds on our own property through dues and fees, future community center activities, programs, because it's on our property. I talked to the staff, and by staff I don't mean Jerry and Debbie. I mean the ladies that work in the office. And I asked them if they had an opinion, if they cared about where they worked, and they unanimously voted for Cyclone. So, and I understand that our staff works for the taxpayer. We also have an incredible office staff. If you've ever gone up there to pay your water bill or ask any variety of questions.
Thank you.
And there's a lot of space to be offered with the township. A separate meeting room for all the different meetings that can take place. But there's also a shared expense with those, and that can even include bays. And I'm just not sure that all of that space is really needed. I don't feel that council needs their own space. I don't see an issue with council using, being rather frugal and using the space provided at the police station. I'm really just worried about the administrative offices for the clerk, the other people that work in the office, and the manager. So I think the fiscally responsible choice is Cyclone. I'm taking into account the consideration of land ownership, the potential for maybe let's scratch grants, multi-purposing our expenditures, sustainability. I think it's for the long view and the big picture. We had the architect and the other subcommittee both recommend Cyclone, and now the staff as well. So I don't think either choice is a bad choice. If we move in with the township, I think that we'll be able to have room to compromise and room to come to agreements. But somewhere in here, we have to trust the experts. A lot of the things that Mr. Kinnaman was saying makes me question, whose job was it to solicit estimates? And is that proposing that there's an accusation of negligence if they're off by that much, when you have your comparison from the builders that you spoke to? So are we gonna just scrap everything and start from scratch?
I mean, it's the,
Comment to that?
That's about everything I have to say,
Yeah.
so.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Mr. Kennedy?
If you want, go ahead, but I was going to comment to her
Oh, go right ahead.
question a little
Yeah.
bit. One of the things we have to remember is, all I've done is ask for a square foot estimate, how much does a square foot cost to have that built, to do that kind of work. In no place in any of our, in any of the work that's been done, have we put out RFPs and asked for a specific bid for what it would cost to do either location. And so we're running speculations on all of it. And I know.
Because we haven't given staff our
Right,
approval
we
to
haven't-
proceed
we
with
ha-
that.
Right, we haven't, some of this is, I think, hard to do, because
The horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse, as Mr.
some of
Nicholas
it's
likes to
that
say.
way, some of it's that way. And so we're working on, for really both locations, the projections that we have. Nothing is definitive someplace.
But we have a business that specializes in that has told us and given us their recommendation, and they deal with building costs continuously,
So,
up or down.
who is that builder?
It should be in the paperwork, who they spoke with. You have all your paperwork.
It's not in
documented.
anybody's paperwork.
Well,
We have
I'm
not
sorry,
been
what's that
given-
in?
We have not been given
I have
a
the
name
floor right now.
any
Okay.
place.
I have the floor right now,
Sure.
thank you. There's got to be, there's got to be. These people deal with this stuff on a daily basis. They know the costs for building per square foot, what it's gonna cost. She stood right here twice and told us her recommendations for Cyclone, not for moving someplace else. It just does not. You just don't do what you're wanting us to do when we have a viable building. We
does.
still have to do something with, no matter what.
It does seem to be quite a stretch. We've spent so many months discussing this and researching it and seeking expert opinions on it, seeking input from the public on it. And Mr. Kinnaman, what you're proposing is that we go against the recommendation of our needs assessment firm, H2A Architects, that we go against the recommendation of the Community Development Committee, which has been studying and discussing this for months. We go against the preference of our own village staff who, when asked to a person, said that their preference was to work at Cyclone Park. And we're going against, what seems to be the will of the majority of the village, as far as our residents go. Any attempt that anybody has made, and there have been several, has always come out that our residents lean towards the Cyclone location. So what you're asking us to say is, we know better than H2A, we know better than the committee, we know better than our staff, and we know better than our public. Because we talked to a couple builders, right, who said, yeah, it's about, $300 per square foot, give or take. That seems to be a big leap for me. I don't know. I have an idea of how the rest of council feels, but
I think, to be fair, there's confusion because he's talking a builder, she's talking an architect.
yes,
Two
I think,
different
yes.
things.
Yes.
So I think, there's, just a little bit of confusion.
I agree, yeah.
They still,
That's what they do.
that's what, yes, exactly, that's what they do. They deal with architects, they deal with builders, they deal with the whole
Yeah,
gamut.
I
So
think,
they would know.
Right.
They would make a recommendation to us if it wasn't, if they didn't have the information.
yeah, and this is their area of expertise, and they look at it from all
That's why we paid the
sides.
money to hire them in the first place.
Right. Any further council comment on this item before we open it up for public comment?
I did just have one more
Yeah.
question. I know the ARPA funds can be used at Cyclone. Can they be used at Grange Hall? The ARPA funds?
They were scheduled to be used for the move of the village offices.
Okay. So it doesn't matter which ones
Does
they
not
can
matter.
be used.
Okay. And now that you say that, I did have, Ms. Baker, do you have any comment or any further information on that grant?
No, the one that I was looking at was specifically only for facilities.
Mhm.
But I didn't research it a lot until a decision is made, because it's not viable for Grange Hall.
Okay. Any further council discussion desired on this item? Public comment. Is there any public comment desired on this item? Mr. Cullis?
Well, I'm getting,
Mr. Close, can you grab the microphone, please? Thank you.
yeah, George Cullis, 601 East Maple Street. I guess I should be used to this by now, but I continually have to get up to defend myself. I know, Ms. Musgrave, you and I share a difference of opinion on this topic. I have never said that we've opened this up to other groups and organizations. What I've said was, when I made the original presentation, there was room for the village offices and the village police and the village DPW. I made the comment there was room for the village library. None of those decisions are made without those groups deciding. I was talking about the potential that the property had. I also never said you would have to share in half of the cost of a community center. Those discussions were never even had. I said we would have discussions and at those times make a decision who wants to be involved and who doesn't. But all of that, the bottom line for what you have here today is you've continually pushed this issue of ownership and equity through your 13 questions, then your 21 questions, then the sample lease that we produced, which was based off of the school lease, and we did that because it had already been approved by the attorney. So those are the things that were there. That's all that was there. My whole scope from the beginning in the township board was how do we serve the residents. Mr. Perkins brought up the fact that he went to 200 homes and he asked them, I know he didn't come to our house, but he asked them, and it was 7-3 on staying in the village. Grange Hall is in the village. We keep having this debate.
I meant ownership at Cyclone. I'm sorry, I should have specified that.
Okay, I'm just going off of the words I hear, because that's what I have to keep defending. Then the only other thing I was going to say to that is, when we talk about access and how busy Grange Hall Road is, remember two things. Number one, Maple Street's going to become very busy when the middle school gets there. All that traffic you hear people complain about on North Holly Road, it's coming over to this side of the town. Maple Street, right now, you can't get out of my driveway at 2:30 in the afternoon because high school's coming out. Well, I can't. My big Dodge is imposing, and I just roll up the road. That being said, nobody complained about accessibility when Taco Bell came in.
Thank you, Mr. Cullis. Anyone else for public comment? Yes.
Marla Davidson, 434 Sherwood Court. I have to rearrange my notes. Talking about walking to that, where do I have that? I believe we're a mobile society. When we walk for pleasure. When we do business, we gather our business various places and do it at the same time. So that's not a great positive. My biggest concern, I think, is the more or less a political one, that we find division instead of the coming together that I've seen happen over these last years. We've made great strides in a long way from becoming away from the Hatfield, McCoy-like governments of yore. And I was told that when I came to Holly that it was a bedroom community. I never thought much about that. It took quite a few years before our bedroom community was discovered, and that's when the township and village started coming together. But maybe there's been too much inbreeding. You realize we sleep together. There's been too much inbreeding. We need to stay friends, and I say fold the cards and take the township deal.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else for public comment on this item?
Amy Hillman, 6053 Great Lakes Drive. I'm a township resident. So are you. You pay the same $1 that I pay, since 1965, by the way. You own Dawson just as much as anybody else does. This is your property. When you talk about equity and something that you're investing in, this is your property. You're trying to separate it. You own it too. It belongs just as much to you as it does to me. I pay the same tax rate. Just because I live out by 75 in Grange Hall makes it no different than somebody that lives on East Maple. So I'm sorry, I'm a little annoyed by that it's been trying to draw this separation amongst taxpayers. You are township residents. You pay township taxes. So do all of your residents. Dawson Tire is theirs too. It belongs to them too. We are going to invest and develop your tax dollars too. Do you want to be a part of helping direct your tax dollars? These are your residents' tax dollars too. This is their property too. You're trying to make it two separate issues. It's the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hillman. Anyone else for public comment? Ms. Mattson.
Anna Mattson, 1509 Western Valley. I want to take a moment to unfold the true impact your decision has tonight, because some of you think we're playing a game. It's not. Your decision affects real people. You are making one of the biggest decisions this council has to make in the foreseeable future. You have hired an architect, and you don't even have architectural plans. You have conceptual plans, they're not architectural plans. You haven't sent out the project for quotes, and you haven't figured out financing either. Not one of you can look at me in the face and tell me how we're going to pay for this. So let's look at some statistics. These come from the Federal Reserve. 18% of Americans say that they can't pay their bills in full this month. That equals 1,067 of your constituents. 18% of Americans say the largest expense they can pay for with savings is only $100. That equals 1,067 of your constituents. 37% of Americans can't put their hands on $400 if they have an emergency right now. That's like 2,500 of your constituents. These are not just random numbers. These are people, the people you all govern. So when you make a decision without all the information and it results in a property tax increase or hidden in the water rates, what will you tell these taxpayers? What will you tell the seniors and those on disability who only make $25,000 a year? What will you tell the families struggling who just found out this week that the American Rescue Plan ended and their child care is going up? What will you tell the residents who are deciding between dinner on the table tonight and gas in their tank to go to work tomorrow? Your decisions affect real people. I don't want to hear that you need to make a game time decision because you've had almost a year. You should table this decision and approve to send out quotes on both decisions so you can make a decision with all the facts in front of you. If it takes you guys meeting every single day until it's done, then so be it. You are public servants, so serve the public.
Thank you, Ms. Mattson. Anyone else for public comment? Mr. Mattson.
Brian Mattson, 15091 Western Valley Drive, thank you. Something that was pointed out was using the police station for a meeting space. Last night, went to the DDA meeting there. Myself, 4 other village residents, one of them being my wife, so we shared a vehicle. We got the last parking spot there. So to have a meeting with the audience we have tonight, we wouldn't have the access and easeability for residents to be a part of our meetings, and that would be a violation of the Open Meetings Act, not being able to have ease of meetings, ease of accessibility, excuse me. There was some criticism of Mr. Kinnaman's builders who he sought out. I've dealt with rehab and real estate. I can tell you it's very much on point. I mean, $200 a square foot for residential, and $300 seems pretty fair. I've been very vocal about, I think this project is truly going to cost $1 million, and $1 million plus. Where are we getting those funds? If we have $600,000 in the bank, we can't wipe that out. If something happens, we need that money. And so if we're going to steer off from an offer from the township where we have very advantageous financing, a long-term at-cost loan or minimal interest, I don't know what for sure has been worked out, but it seems to be very friendly to the village. How are we going to fund that? We're going to raise our property taxes, another bond, higher bond on the water. Everyone already complains about the water. There's already talks of extending the bond. We don't even know why. Just to keep it on there so we can have future things done to the infrastructure there, which I'm sure is important, but it will just be added expense and cost. Inflation is rampant. Everyone is struggling. It seems like it's not a very fiscally responsible decision if we have to go out and get a loan at a high interest rate to pay for this building. There's a sense of urgency now to do something with Cyclone Park. If we haven't done anything to that building, I don't see much going on there. If we could sell that property, if there's someone truly interested, get some sort of small development there. Now we have taxpayer income coming in to help get us generate more funds. The space within the village is very limited. We could very easily, I think, have a desirable something put there, but by a taxpayer and have more revenue generated here. 2021 census, looked it up, it was 54,206 for the village, just to help clarify. And just to point out that we touched on the architect, that they're historically low. They're not builders, they're not dealing with the material price changes, they're not dealing with that stuff day in and day out. So again, I very much agree with Mr. Kinnaman in my experience. I think his dollars per square foot is very much on par with what the actual cost will be. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for public comment? Mr. Hoffman.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I agree that Mr. Kinnaman's estimate is pretty right on per square foot. But more importantly, there should be one question that needs to be answered and really hasn't been answered yet. It's what will serve the taxpayers better? And it's not having 2 different locations, because that is not service to the taxpayers. And I support Grange Hall Road for a couple reasons. 1, the cost to be less. 2, you can own it, because that's a concern. You can we talked about it last time. You get the economies of scale. You're going to share in the expense of that place, and that'll be easier on the taxpayers. I just think it's once you make that decision, what is the best way to serve the taxpayers, you'll come to the conclusion that is the best place. Because if it were your own money, I can't imagine you doing 2 locations like this. It would not make any sense. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for public comment? Mr. Love.
It's been interesting hearing this, because all it says is, whatever you do is wrong. So we'll just see what you come up with.
Thank you, Mr. Love. Is there anyone else for public comment? Yes, Ms. Wallace.
Angela Wallace, 709 Baird Street. The one thing I would like to say, well, 2 things. Cyclone Park has to stay a park. It's in the deed, it's in the perpetuity, or however it is. It has to stay a park. There's no selling it, there's no giving it that to a development company. There's nothing that we can do about it. It has to stay a park. That's the way it is. It's not able to be sold to developers for money that would then help the village, the people in the village. The second thing is, as much as I love Amy, and we do disagree on this, but I still love her, it's the point where we're saying, well, we're one. Well, we're also one with the freaking state of Michigan, so why don't we move it to Lansing? We're one with Oakland County. Why don't we move it to Oakland County's 1200 building? That does not matter. I still pay separate village and separate township taxes. They are 2 different entities, whether we like that or not. That's the way it is. So it doesn't have to be in one building for us to be one, because I still pay my village taxes. I still pay my township taxes, as do you and the other residents that live in the village. We all pay for both. So the whole argument of, well, we're just one anyway. Well, we're one with the state of Michigan or the United States, so why don't we just move to Washington, D.C. and let everybody pay their water bills there? We're all one anyway. We're just the United States. That argument cannot be held as a viable argument, because we are 2 separate entities. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Anyone else for public comment? Right? Yes, Mr. DeSessa.
Bill DeSessa, 5100 East Holly Road. Just to make a couple points. First of all, I agree, park is deed restricted, is certainly my understanding as well, so I agree with Angela on that. I'm going with the architect point, though, and I know you guys have, I absolutely have a tough decision here, and not necessarily here to recommend one way or the other, but on a couple points, on the architect's drawings, it's definitely a guideline, but let's face it, how that usually works is if the administration wants something, the vendor who has that contract is going to generally give the administration, in general sense, what they want. So how objective it is, I just question. Now, I don't know the details. Jerry Walker et al. May have went out of their way to say this needs to be totally objective, keep me out of it, and the architect came down how they did. But just saying, usually how it works is you get, the administration gets what it wants in any village or city. Same thing with the polling of the employees. They may have all been telling exactly how they felt, or were they telling what the administration wanted them to say out of fear of retribution, etc. And then lastly, Jim, to your poll, was it township? Just village? I don't know. I'm sorry?
Just village.
Okay, so, again, you have to maybe discount that a little bit. Not that they're not to be heard, but without township in there, how valid is that? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for public comment? All right. Seeing none, hearing none, Ms. Bigger, I believe we are ready for a roll call. Yes, sorry.
I do agree
Mr.
with
Perkins.
something that Ms. Maxon said. Without actual numbers, like you had said, this is all based on speculation. We're making a decision based on maybe. That's crazy.
They can't hear you.
I said we're making a decision based on maybe. That's insane. We have to actually know what we're looking at. I know
What's-
the way that I feel and the people I've talked to, but fiscally,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, my only question to that would be, by what mechanism do we get numbers that are any more concrete than what our needs assessment firm can provide to us? Like, what's the crystal ball?
I know.
Or, you know what I'm saying? How does that work?
Find a location.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean,
You
Well,
know?
I think another relevant question is how far do you go with follow-through before you've made a decision? How much are we going to spend on investigating the township if we're still not sure if we want Cyclone and vice
Agreed.
versa?
I know it's,
So, and I think that is where we do need to make, both choices are good choices. We just need to make up our minds.
I agree.
And then invest. Either way, it's a worthy investment, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, it's just the proverbial rock and a hard place.
Now, I suppose I should clarify before we proceed to a roll call vote. We do have a motion and support on the floor. If perchance this vote fails, I still think we have a decision to make, and it would be appropriate, to entertain another motion, as indeed we have done before with similar situations.
Agreed.
Is that okay?
Agreed. I think you're correct.
Very good. In that case, Ms. Bigger, roll call vote, please.
Do you want Attorney Gildner to read the motion again? just
Please,
in
that would be,
case?
that would be
It's been a
great.
while.
Yes, thank you.
It would be a motion to select the Grange Hall location as the future site for village offices, subject to a acceptable contract to the village attorney between the township and village, or words to that effect.
You worded that so well, Mr. Kinnaman.
I know, I'm, ChatGPT really helps us.
All I heard was what he said.
All right,
That's
Ms. Bigger,
my
roll call,
AI
please.
over there.
Harrington,
Yes.
Kinnaman,
Yes.
Kyer,
Yes.
Perkins,
No.
Musgrave,
No.
Brandon,
No.
Delaney.
No. Motion fails on a 4-3 no vote. Do we have another motion regarding this topic?
I will make the motion that we select as a council for Cyclone Park to be the new home of the village council offices.
Support?
All right, motion by Musgrave, support by Perkins to select Cyclone Park as the future site of the Holly Village offices. Is there any council discussion desired? I think we've
Yeah, I think.
discussed
This
just
is,
about all angles.
this is the.
The night is young, ladies and gentlemen.
I was
Sorry.
just going to say, this is the mirror, or the exact opposite of what we all just heard. So
Yes.
you can have all the discussion again. I would just point out what you already know. I think you spent about an hour debating
Yes,
the one
yes.
topic, so.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gildner. And in a similar vein, I don't think there's any further public comment on this, but I do want to open it up. Oh, Ms. Mattson, yes.
Anna Matson, 1509 Western Valley. Once again, you guys can send out a request for proposal. And if you're unfamiliar with what that is the official process to get quotes. Nothing stops you from doing it for both projects. So you can actually see in front of you, here are the quotes from different construction companies, and have all the information in front of you before you make this decision that's going to affect your residents. Why? I just don't understand the discussion that we have to make a decision tonight and find out the rest later. Because you probably don't want to find out what's going to happen later if you don't have your facts first. And this does not hinder the timeline at all if you do them both right away.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Rozell.
Hi, Dick Russell, 512 East Maple Street. I apologize for getting here late. I had a very sick friend that I've been helping out. I just got a couple of things, and I think most of you at this point know where I stand on this. The construction for Cyclone Park, for those of you that don't know it, Mr. Iafano is a contractor and has been for years. He has agreed that if you select that site, he would run the project at no charge. He's willing to do it because he's a volunteer in this community, is very invested in this community and wants to see it happen. I think, if nothing else, that alone tips the scales on this. And I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do it. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you very much for that.
Could I add one thing? Piggyback
Yes.
on Mr. Rosa.
Yeah.
That my business would also volunteer the painting of the building at no cost to the village.
Okay, thank you. Further public comment on this item? I thought I saw someone.
Marlo.
Ms. Davidson, yes.
I think if you vote on that, you're going backwards. I'm sorry. You're going back in time.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, hearing none. Ms. Bigger, roll call vote, please.
Kinnaman.
No.
Kyer.
No.
Perkins.
Yes.
Musgrave.
Yes.
Brandon.
Yes.
Harrington.
No.
Delaney.
Yes. Motion carries. On to new business.
Mr. Chair, can we?
Yes.
That's what I was
we
going to
take
say.
a,
Gracie,
5-minute break? Yes.
Gracie there.
I'll trip her if you need me to. Just saying.
Amazingly.